Hey guys, Redshifter's here. We decided to do a little video to explain how to build the replacement frame for the Elf. If you're anything like me and you had a DYS Elf, you probably crashed it multiple times and had to order frames from foreign soil, which took forever to get here. So here's a replacement frame from Redshifters. This is us. The frame is designed from nylon carbon composite and then a PETG canopy with our lovely logo on top. So what you'll need to build this lovely build kit is the original Elf board with the motors. Do not desolder the motors. You don't have to. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Make sure to desolder the LED lights. The receiver from the Elf in its original shape, and the original camera. We are providing a universal battery mount that will fit the original Elf battery, and also will fit larger, wider, fatter batteries. And our unique design of a prop guard that is also a stilt. You'll see how it works in a second. So putting the board is the first thing you want to do. So the way this goes in, again, you do not need to desolder the motors. All you need to do is dangle the motors using our planet's gravity. That's geeky, I know. Into the little slot in the middle. So make sure you clear that battery mount situation and just dangle the motors right in. So you can see from the other side, all the motors are just clearly just sitting inside. The next thing you want to do is locate the USB and put it inside the USB slot right here. So you pretty much tilt the board diagonally like so to fit the USB inside. And then make sure that all the cables are sitting inside the crevices that are built for them right in the center of this unit right here. It's a little hole, a little rail for the cables to fit in. So again, grab all motors and make sure that they're aligned with those holes. If you need to lift up the board to do that, please do, because you don't want to hurt the cables. There's room, just be careful. The next step, you want to be careful. This, due to the nature of 3D printing, the frame might be a little tighter or looser, so just make sure that you give it, the time it needs to sit properly. So all you want to do is start pushing the frame down while slowly making sure that the cables are still loose and are sitting inside. So the cable should not ever be stuck. If at some point the cable feels like it's not going in and out, that something is a little too tight. So once this is done, this should fit in there like that with a nice clicking sound, nice and flush, and all, stable. Pretty much almost doesn't need any screws, but we're gonna add some just in case. So the next thing you wanna do is put these two screws. So you get six of those shorter screws. You have 3 different sizes. We're not going to name the sizes, but let's call them small, medium, large. So instead of boring you with actually screwing them in, we're just going to tell you where they go. So the 2 medium screws, 2 of the 6, will go on the sides of the canopy from the top. So the next thing you want to do is motors. We do not provide the motor screws, obviously, but you can scavenge the motor screws from the Elf. Again, I did not mention, all these screws that we are providing are not a necessity. You can actually use the original Elf screws, all of them, and you have actually way too many Elf screws, so pretty much 50% of them could be used for this build and will work just fine. So you don't have to use the screws that we provide. So the motors, after they've been dangled down like this, goes right through that hole and into the location where they're built, where they're mounted. Okay, this should fit. There's a little nice countersunk design in the back, similar to what the original Elf came with. Whatever screws you're using will fit. The Elf screws are just fine. So moving on, after putting all 4 motors in using the original Elf screws, I only used 2, but you can use all 4 if you want. I'm just trying to reduce some weight. The next thing you want to do is the camera. So again, this little turtle head in the front is designed for the camera. It kind of looks like a Star Wars AT-AT, but I'm just a geek, so don't mind me. The Elf camera is designed so that the cables are at the bottom. You just want to make sure that the solder is pretty flush, it's pretty flat, so it's not protruding too much up. So in case you have to make some adjustment to try to make these cables as flush as possible, it'll be great, but I think originally it pretty much came like this. So again, in this little nook design, the little cockpit design for the camera, there is I don't know if you can see it with the lighting, there's a little crevice here for the cables, because this is where the cables go in order for them not to get smushed. So the cables are on the bottom, and you place the camera right inside this slot, like so, in the angle that it's supposed to go. This is a 25-degree angle, which we found to be a nice angle, especially comparatively to the original Elf that was about 10 degrees. So this will give you a little bit more of a oomph flying. So you want to slide the camera carefully, making sure that the cable is, again, similar to the motors, is still free. So you slide the camera in. Now again, due to the nature of 3D printing, this might be a little tight, plus we want it to be nice and cozy. So if it doesn't go in very smoothly, which it somewhat should, at least like 3/4 of the way in, you might want to pop it out a little and then push it back in and continue the same thing. Eventually, it should sit nice and flush. And you can go ahead and connect this. JST, what's the orientation here? I believe like this. There you go. Camera is connected. Make sure it stays inside the entire build. Next thing you want to do is put the receiver on the canopy. So the orientation doesn't really matter. It could be this way or this way, kind of up to you. But then going back to our small, medium, large screws, we are going to use 2 of the small screws to put the receiver in the canopy. There, if you can see, there are like 2 mounting holes ready for the purpose of this. So here goes. So screw that. Here goes. Receiver is connected to the canopy. Pretty self-explanatory, I would say. You can put the antenna the way you want it. And here goes the fancy attachment. Before you put the canopy in, you want to connect this JST to where it's supposed to go, hopefully without ripping the cables. There should be plenty slack. So before we put the canopy on, you just want to make sure that your camera is focused. So you want to screw it in there and probably test it out to see that it's focused, because if you build the whole thing, you'll still be able to move it slightly, but it's not going to be as convenient. So putting the canopy in, the only thing you want to make sure is that this middle stem is clear of these camera cables. Other than that, you should be in the clear. You have 2 stems in the back for the screws and 1 in the front. You want to put the teeth of this canopy right where the camera is, so flush to the surface, right here. And all you have to do is pretty much push it right in. And it should sit like this, protecting the camera and kind of looking badass. All right, so the next step will be to screw the canopy. I mistakenly said we have 2 large screws, but we actually have 3. Voila. So flipping it around, you have 3 mounting holes. 1, 2, 3. Guess what? It's exactly identical to the ELF. You can use the ELF screws. Also had 3, I believe. But anyway, you can use the black large screws from the ELF if you want to keep it in black. These screws are just a little better. So what you want to do is slide them in. Good. And now, while pushing the canopy down, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. You've all screwed stuff before, right? But just make sure that you push it down. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the holes in the canopy are not fully threaded. The reason is we didn't want it to break. So we wanted to give it enough material for you guys so that the bite is strong enough. So you're going to pretty much do the threading while you're pushing it in. So make sure you hold the canopy down. And pretty much you are threading and screwing at the same time, which is fine. Now this carbon fiber nylon composite is soft to a degree, not when it comes to collision. It's one of the strongest things out there. But when it comes to threading and mounting, you can pretty much also slightly countersink it while you're screwing it in. So it doesn't necessarily have to be flush. So don't be afraid to over crank it inside there. It'll just create a natural countersink, kind of similar to working with wood, only super strong. Same thing goes for the motor screws. The motor screws, if you notice, I use the original ones from the ELF. That's why they're so stripped. But you can also forcefully pretty much countersink them into the frame, and that's perfectly fine. Do not be afraid to break it. It won't. It's carbon fiber. All right, so same goes for the back screws. You're holding the canopy down while threading this in. So pretty much the next thing you want to do is a battery mount. It's a universal battery mount. So there's a little place for it where it sits, you see. It's designed to fit in there while clearing the battery, the original ELF battery JST, unless of course you want to solder an external cable for this to fit a different kind of battery, which it will. I think you might want to put these screws in those little holes probably before you put it in there. It'll just make it a little easier for you to get them through. This is not going to be easy regardless because these are tiny screws and we all love tiny screws. Alright, so after you have all 4 screws roughly inset in there, you can go ahead and place the battery mount that also protects the VTX antenna. And go ahead and tilt it and screw it down into the holes carefully and make sure that it just is sitting right in there. Last but not least, the fancy schmancy prop stilts. So, again, similar to what you did with the battery mount, you might want to prepare this before snapping it into place. So you take those remaining 4 medium screws and put them at the top being the the half moon situation at the top. And you'll notice there's a little, I don't know if you can see, there you go. There's a little countersink happening right at the top. So you'll be able to recognize that being the top as well. So you plop the screw in there, and again, screw it just a little bit so it bites, so you have this prepared. So we're gonna do this for all four. Again, this will just make it easier instead of trying to put a screw in while holding the entire frame. Alrighty. Again, you can use the original elf screws, the one that went into the prop guard situation, the complete prop guard. So you can use the same screws. This will work just fine. But then, again, these are a little bit better screws. So, if you notice, you have these like four holes, pretty much ready for this to pop in. So what you want to do is put it in there, like so. They'll open and snap right into place. Gonna do those to all four. Or you can do them individually and then deal with the screws. However you want to run this, but pretty much should look like this. Then, long story short, you want to be pushing this part in while you're screwing because, again, we want it to have a bite, so these are not threaded. These are just drilled, so you are basically threading it as you're screwing it. So just make sure that you're pretty much, you can do it like this, just push this part in or right here, push it in while you're screwing the screw so that it does not clamp apart with the screw, and you're pretty much threading it. This is fairly easy, it's not complicated or hard to do, you just need to have a little bit of pressure, that's all. So it should look like this, pretty much when the screw, if you can see, when the screw is starting to come out of this prop stilt, then you're good to go. Do this to all four. Again, pressing down the bottom as you're screwing it in.